to me why there might be a transfer bus needing to go.
So I would share this with I would say this with a court ordered placement. Those are more on, those fall more on not, with custody situation with parents, right? You may get, hey, court ordered placement, there's a situation on, you got to go live with your you have to go live with your grandparents because there's some, right, there's,
Guardianship.
right, a big guardianship thing, as typically with the once the custody stuff is done, it's the parents, right? It'll sometimes say in the parenting plan, right? It will say sort of who's responsible for what, and it's very typical when it's what will happen is, in my experience with the parenting plan, it's, hey, you got to tell the school, right? What's the address? We're going to provide that transportation to that
One address.
that one location, and as part of the parenting plan, right? You all are responsible for figuring out. Typically, the parents are responsible for figuring out how that works.
And to clarify the special education component of this, if let's just say it's all elementary. If I have a child who is at Memorial and I move into the Reuben Torres district, then my student becomes out of district. And if there is transportation listed as a service, we will transport it to the school that they are living in now. So if I move to Reuben Torres, we are able to transport to Reuben Torres.
It follows that.
Not to Memorial. If I choose to stay at Memorial, I need to provide my own transportation. That's where there's a lot of confusion because parents think I have an IEP. On my IEP, it says I get transportation, and they don't understand that yes, we do provide it at your school of residence.
And if we ever get to a need here in Deming where, hey, in the future with our special education programs, right? These schools really specialize in serving the needs of these kids, and it's something that we're requiring that you go in, then we will provide it, even if it's
I think that's a distinction.
even if it's out of zone.
Because some elementaries are going to offer something different.
Right. If we ever, that's not the situation now. We don't have anything that's particularly specialized, right? But as we learn over the next couple of years how to best serve our students' disabilities, we have people come give us some advice that could be a recommendation. Then we have to look into that, and it would have an impact on transportation because we would then provide that because right at school X we do not provide this program. We do provide it school Y. Well, it doesn't matter where you live, right? We'll transport you to school Y, but we're not quite there yet. So any feedback on either of these options?
I'm curious to know if there's a recommendation by the district as to which route.
Right. We've talked about this, and we know what has been, historically has been the procedure here in Deming. I think last year with the new transportation director, Ms. Treviso, there was some shifting and tightening of the turfs themselves, right? So even the turfs themselves have a much narrower focus. We've talked about as a district, if we keep the turfs, there's going to need to be a little bit even more narrowing on the turfs because we're still trying to address some of these parental custody things, right? That really aren't tenable as part of our responsibility. But to really provide a lot of clarity on for transportation to plan routes, optimizing routes, making sure we're not running more routes than we need to. Picking option B where you eventually get to right just the policy, right? If you live in the zone, we'll transport you in the zone. If you live out of the zone, you're going to need to transport yourself. That is I've done a little research on that across the state. That is
what's happening.
That is what is happening. Again, well, that's what's happening on paper. Let me say that's happening in policy. Ms. Crumley, right? I haven't traveled around and called the transportation director to see what's actually happening, but that is the very common. That is very common. So that's just if you're asking me, that's B is as a district, it's going to get us to the spot we need to for the most optimal operation of our transportation situation.
And that would kind of match with the open enrollment.
That is correct.
Because it's going to be on the same grandfathered in kind of thing. It'll start with kids in kindergarten.
That is correct.
So,
That is correct. And not just kindergarten. Now, again, it's, just like with the school choice, right? If you want to go on a school choice application for the first time next year,
That it applies.
it applies, right? You gotta renew annually, right?
but it would make it more across the board.
Correct.
Even.
Consistent.
Yeah.
Right, because again, if, you're right,
Yeah.
Ms. Pice. So that's kind of, if you're asking us and if we were gonna put a policy in place, regulation in place, it would be option B,
And option B would mean then that we would not.
except any new turfs.
Well, and we wouldn't modify existing policy.
Oh, well, we would have to modify it
Oh.
just to, right,
Still?
you still have to, because it says, current policy, Ms. Crumley says they're on line 26 or 28, right? No freedom of choice transportation, it's your own deal. If we didn't put this exception referring to the grandfathering in,
Oh, then you
that
could
means
grab.
everybody that was currently on turf,
Mhm.
they'd be off turf.
So then either way, regulations within your purview. not ours.
Correct, but we want, this is an important.
Yep.
This is an important thing for y'all to give us input on, yeah, I mean, and we want to spell this out, because again, we'll grandfather you in, you can do this, but any new ones that come next year, right? They're gonna be no
I
turf.
think option B makes more sense practically from a school's point of view. I don't think that it should be within the school's responsibility to have to accommodate as many people as they can to transport kids outside of zones without very good reason, like an IEP or a court order or foster care, McKinney-Vento.
Well,
I
that's
think
where
if-
they would have the application to, and they can be denied, but I
But
think
then you'll
saying
have
no.
increased conflict, increased people unhappy, people asserting that there's favoritism. It just opens the door to a whole bunch of issues. And it also means that the district could be inundated with these applications that they also have to go through.
But have you seen what this says? If a kid in elementary lives within a mile of the school, they don't have to give them transportation. So like Belle, I was in line waiting to pick up my kid the other day. A lady walked down Maple, the middle of it, started screaming at me while I'm sitting in my car, throws a can of something at my car. We don't want our kids walking home with that kind of stuff going on. When I dropped off my kids, there's the same stuff walking around screaming at the sky. So for me, whenever we have parents that need a babysitter that might be out of that area, this is how that kid gets to the babysitter, whether it's grandma or whatever. And right now, it's my understanding there's one bus and there's only, I think, 4 kids on it that go around. And I think the person at Baton that watches them, is he an EA maybe?
In the afternoon or in the AM?
In the morning, I know. Is it a teacher? So it's like a duty. It's not like we're hiring someone special for it. My kids use it. My son does. And if it weren't for, because we have a safety issue where our kids going to Columbus has for generations been a safety concern. So typically they would go to Baton, but Baton has been old since Lucas has been old enough. And from there, Bell was the next option. But it was either ask for the waiver or we'd have to homeschool, because I can't spend 4 hours driving back and forth to get him to school either. And as it is, I meet the bus halfway because there's like 5 houses out where we're at. So it's just a very, saying no and a hard no, I don't think is the right idea. But with the having the teachers prioritized and all that, with the registration will significantly reduce the number of kids transferring. And it's only elementary kids that would need this. That's it for me. Honestly, having to go through what was a nightmare for me, the 2 years this past year, I've been able to see what's going on around the schools. Belle's been on lockdown a couple times just for creepy people staring at the kids at recess. And so we're expecting our kids, if they're latchkey kids, to walk home during that or with that around it. I just don't feel that that's safe.
And that's
Hasn't it
the-
always
that's
been that
the-
way?
Well, that's
Unless-
the policy, that's the and
That's
that's
where, and we ran in with him, policy says one thing, but what we've been doing is not what our policy said. So from day one, he's been saying, if we're gonna continue this, we need to change the policy to where there is that option.
So if I can clarify, the transportation regs, the NMAC, I never remember what it is. And that. It's the walking is what they set the standard, one mile for elementary up to.
I know that's something that we don't control.
No.
But for me, like in the Bell area, if a parent is working and needs their kid to go to a grandparent's house after school for their safety.
And what I'll share with you, Ms. Johnson, that again, whatever option, again, we'll take your feedback, and if we need to, have another conversation, the board meeting in March, we can. Let's say we were to stick with option A, right? Having the annual application for the exceptions. As I did mention earlier, as there was gonna be some more tightening down on the turfs themselves. I do wanna be honest with you, right? Those types of scenarios you described about taking a student to a babysitter in a different zone or to two different parents, right? Those are things that are probably very likely not gonna be part of the turf anyway, right? Because those things are,
Those are parental
those
responsibilities.
are, and truthfully, they become like very subjective situations, right? On those turfs, if we're gonna continue to do turfs, we're trying to get to things that are a little less subjective in the decision making. And though I think, as superintendent, I'm sympathetic to that. It is difficult to plan for every kind of condition that may
It's impossible.
occur. So, to be very transparent, right? Whichever was decided here, even if it's the turfs are gonna be narrowed further, and those things that you mentioned, do fall in to that category of things that, are likely gonna be excluded from the turfs.
And if I can just add we're switching to a new software, so we really want to make sure that we are transporting students to the address that's listed on Infinite Campus, because it's gonna now talk, not very techy, to our system, and that's the address whenever we go to route a student. If we get a new student, whatever address is on Infinite, that's the address it's gonna route it to. So before, we were able to input all these other addresses, and we're not gonna have that capability to do that anymore.
It's just not as flexible then.
Well, eligible students, according to the NMAC, are the residents. So wherever the student resides, that's what he's talking about. We're gonna have to really look at
Okay, that makes
the
sense.
terms.
Okay.
And here's what I'll share, right? What I can sense is that, there may need to be a little more discussion on this, okay? Right? I think, what I hear is that regardless, we're gonna need some type of exception, right? Whether we go with option A or B, right? Very likely, right? B, the grandfathering out, A, the annual approval. The thing that will need your approval next board meeting would be the policy that,
Yeah.
that with the one sentence, right? That gives us a little bit of time still, to get your all's feedback. So we can get feedback in, the next couple of, the next couple of board meetings. To land on what regulation, we need to settle on. Because by the time we get to the middle of April, we gotta know what the regulation is gonna be. So, Ms. Amarie's department and, Mr. Wyman's department can, start communicating out what's gonna happen. So, I do hear that we maybe need some more discussion on this, some more looking into this. And I'll make sure we take time to do that. But what I can hear is that we need to agree to, get this policy, at least approved with the one sentence, so we can have some exceptions versus it saying
None.
none whatsoever. Can we agree on that right now?
Yes.
All right, so, I'm gonna do this, we're gonna look at this last policy for searches, then we're gonna take just a little quick 10-minute break here, then we're gonna turn it over to Miss Stephanie, okay? Thank you for your feedback on that. The last policy we're gonna look at, that we've looked at before a couple of times, so this shouldn't, nothing's gonna come in here that's too much of a surprise, we just cleaned up a couple of things and got some feedback from, our attorneys on something we had talked about in a previous board meeting. So again, this is, our searches and, student searches and interrogations and arrest. Again, we wanna update this so we can use our open gate weapons detection system, or we can use the canines that we'll enter an MOU with hopefully at the end of, March with the PD. As well as we had this conversation about, do we do random searches? How does that fall? So again, the first page here, page 1, lines 1 through 36. Again, just some updated terminology in law enforcement versus peace officer, some minor edits there. Page 2, is where the significant changes occur. Again, you'll see there, starting on line, 11, that talks about that all items can be searched on the way in with the screening device. Number 2, the preventative canine free air sniffs. So technically the canines from the department, they don't search individual students. They sort of just sniff the surrounding air, right? And if they sniff something of concern, then that could be reasonable suspicion as a school for us to pull aside and do a school reasonable suspicion search. Of course, I have to do regulations for that, and we're working on that at this time. Okay, so these 2 in yellow and red, we had initially proposed to you all the random wand search, okay, which the Fourth Amendment, people have the right to be, secure in their person and property and free from unreasonable search and seizure. We got a little bit more feedback from legal. There is a little bit of concern about random searches, because if you don't do them well, you could really fall afoul of the Fourth Amendment when you don't really have a reason. In addition to, even if you do them, if you don't truly do them randomly and you do them targeted, you open yourself up to some other concerns. So they did, of course, put a note here in yellow for us that we could do a wand search. And we can do a wand search if we do have, as it says down on line 32, reasonable suspicion. Okay, so for example, if there was a situation where there were some students in the bathroom that were vaping, right? One student came out and said, I saw student A vaping in the bathroom. We as a school would have to determine, is that reasonable suspicion to, search this kid? Well, depending on the information that we had, yes, we could then use a wand, right? To wand the student, versus, maybe a pat down, another kind of search. And then we say, hey, you got a wand here, let's call your parents in. So that allows us to use the wands. And then a reasonable suspicion search on line 32 that's the standard that is used in schools in general. We don't have to have probable cause like law enforcement. We just have to have individualized reasonable suspicion. And of course, whenever we search a student, we want to be careful, right? Going to search a student for a vape and the suspicion we have for that, we should be a little more certain. But of course, if we get a report that a kid might have a weapon, right, we're going to act on that a little bit quicker. And then on page 3, we got lines 16 through 21. And then of course, it's telling us there that we can, the canine searches that we do have on campus, if we're going to run them through the lockers or run them around, that requires my or my designee's authority. And again, that if there is, a student that, even though that be individually searched, if their belongings are left in the classroom or something that happened to, the dogs indicate there might be something there, right? Those students have to be addressed in a private, confidential manner. And of course, you'll see in the MOU and regulation, the goal with the canines is not to, like the old days when we were in school, you don't run the canines in the classroom with the kids. Typically, it's they leave their belongings in there, the kids exit the room to another room, and then typically the dog kind of goes in the room. Now, again, the dog may be sitting there in the hall when the kids are passing. You can't just turn, right? You can't turn the dog off, right? But as the kids are leaving the room, right, that dog may sense something and could kind of indicate towards a kid, and we would have to kind of stop the line there and say, hey, let's go take a second look at what you might have, and that's trigger the one search. So and then of course the last one, and again, I think it's important to know that if the last page, if a law enforcement shows up, then they want, and it's not part of something that we've called and asked for, and they want to arrest a kid, they do have to provide us with a signed judicial criminal warrant. That's important to know. Even if an agency shows up and it's for something we didn't call for, this is back on line 7, right? They have to come to our school and give us proper documentation that they're authorized to, meet with the kids and interview them. Typically though, they do those things outside of school, unless it is something having to do with CYFD, which will often come to the school to do. So we're getting to the pretty good point with this. We're working on our regulation, but this is one we definitely hope you will consider for approval at the end of March, because we do have some training here on the 17th, just in this building, about the open gate weapon system. The open gate is going to come hopefully in April and do some on-site practice. We want to make sure we have time. We want to make sure we have time early April to notify the community of, hey, these are our new search procedures. We're going to be piloting, our open gate system on campus these days for full implementation next year. So kind of here, in April, we want to run some practices, and we want to make sure this is in place and let the community know that, hey, we're running some practice and this will become fully implemented next year. Any clarifying questions?
I had a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
So on line 11, or 12, sorry, where it says like entries, there could be canine use.
Which page, Mrs. Crumlin?
Page 2.
Page 2, very good.
So does that mean then that the district envisions there being a dog there sniffing each kid? Is that even?
No, that's not, we actually talked to the police department about that. This is one where they say that the dog may be present in the foyer while the kids are entering. Again, they were sharing us that they don't search individual kids.
Gotcha.
If you want to think about kind of like at the airport,
Yeah.
when you're just kind of in the TSA line and the dog is sort of just
Yeah.
around, that is kind of what a free air sniff is like.
And
Correct,
then
Charles?
on 1516 then, where it says students and personal property are not expected to be
Right.
present,
Right.
doesn't that need to be stricken? Cause they're
Yeah.
gonna be there.
Yeah, I think that and this is something Mr. Turner have gone about, like that word says expected.
Not expected.
Yeah, right. It's almost like
Madam President, Superintendent,
Yes.
if I may, what that is really referring to is if we're walking, well, not us, but the officer is walking the canine through the hallway, that cone of the descent could be just in the hallway and alert to a specific classroom. So the student and their belonging is not in the hallway, but the dog gets hit on something. So
Okay.
it does what the officer was calling pull, so it's starting to pull towards a specific classroom, which then Mr. W would get a phone call saying, it's pulling towards this classroom, can we ask the students to step out?
Okay, I think it's confusing.
it is. I'm
Cause then there's no discussion about, okay, so. How does a classroom search with a canine work then? I understand you saying it's not like when I was in school where the
Right.
dog comes in the
Right.
class and all of us are there.
Yeah.
But if you have a sentence that says students and their personal property are not
Ma-
expected to be present in areas subject to a free air sniff.
Right.
Maybe free air sniff just needs to be
Yeah.
defined somewhere.
I think so. Mr. Turner, I've gone, we have actually talked about this, multiple times. It's, may be present, might be present, could be present, right? Is this word expected or not expected that I think is causing a little bit of, lack of clarity.
Yeah.
And again, that was tied back to the MOU and back to the regulation sort of as a lack of clarity. Okay? So, we'll make a note of that. That's been the sentence that,
It's just.
has been, haunting me.
Okay.
And we'll work on that before we get to, March. Okay, what else? Just those two areas, Ms. Crumley? What else you got, Ms. Bias?
Where it says designee, the superintendent.
Which page and line?
That's 18. Page 3.
Page 3, 18?
Yeah. Page
Yes.
3, 18. What does that specifically mean?
Yeah, so the designee, and it's actually,
Is there-
in the board,
Definition.
in the MOU,
Oh, okay.
in the MOU, the designee is, it's,
Administrator.
the deputy superintendent or, district security, leads. Initially, the MOU had like,
Administrators.
had campus administrators and SROs. We said, no, if you're gonna have the dogs anywhere, it needs to be superintendent, deputy superintendent, or
That's
the
good.
security
Okay,
person.
thank
And it
you.
actually said that they will not, as per the MOU, they will not run the dogs unless, one of them, says that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No
And
problem.
Madam President, Ms. Paez, that'll be defined in the regulation that we'll draft for implementation.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on these? What we're gonna do, Charles, if you wanna pause that, we're gonna take just a little 10-minute nature break here.
Before we do
Oh,
that,
sorry,
we'll need a
Charles.
motion for a recess.
Go ahead.
Have a motion for recess. Minutes.
I make that motion?
Can I have a second? Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Flores.
Yes.
Mrs. Como, yes. We're in recess.
Yeah, we're live. Okay, do we need to come out of?
We need a motion to come.
A motion.
We are all back from recess. Do I have a motion to return
To the
to our
open.
work session?
Make a motion to return into the work session.
Second?
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley, yes.
Okay, Madam President, members of the board, we're fortunate here, as we mentioned, we've been working on revising I mentioned in the board meeting that we're gonna begin to revise the strategic plan that you all worked on, began to work. The work had started a couple of years ago in the district. We're going to work to revise that. Ms. Waika from Everest has been in district. She has met with teachers, students today. She met with some students today. She met with support staff. She met with campus leadership and district leadership to get some input on revising. I know she'll talk about that a little more, what she's been doing. But today we wanted to make sure that we got your input. And then Ms. Waika will also tell you the additional input we're going to get before, as in our timeline, to sort of craft this revised strategic plan and get it back to you all for approval, which will really help us guide all of our efforts going forward over the next 3 years. Ms. Waika, or Stephanie.
Yeah. Madam President and board members and Superintendent Wogumu, thank you so much. Please don't feel like you need to call me Ms. Waika. Stephanie, I had the kids today call me Stephanie as well. I'm so excited to be here with you all in person after meeting you all virtually previously and just spend some time together and really visiting some of those priorities. So I have a couple introduction slides, and then we're going to be doing some work that will be independently and then looking at and viewing collaboratively together as well. So where we are, there had been a draft plan and some input was gathered and a plan was drafted, but it had not been ultimately approved by the board. Then Deming experienced a leadership shift. A new superintendent was appointed, and Superintendent Olgamuth has shared his evaluation process and everything with me as well. And you all had committed to some of that of shifting towards a focus on more on student outcomes. And so where we are now is really gathering perspective across a variety of groups on priorities and focused needs. So what are we saying is really the most important for moving student outcomes? And we're doing that through a lens of really thinking about our strategic plan through the school board and district's leadership, and what does that look like from the lens of board governance, and then what does that also look like from that that lens of district leadership. And so a school board determines goals for the strategic plan. They set specific priorities and define the desired outcomes for that. And then you all are going to monitor the progress of that strategic plan through routine district leadership updates. You all are working with our company that I am from, Everest Analytics, to engage in that process. So we have some specific cadence of updates that we will provide to you on a quarterly basis to support this. Then the second level, and I always like to think about it as a line. So what happens above the line is school board governance, and then what happens below the line is the work of district leadership. The district leadership determines specific strategies for board goals, and the district's leadership will develop systems and structures for implementation and impact monitoring, how they're really monitoring tightly the implementation of the strategies and what impact it's ultimately having on student outcomes, and then providing those routine updates to the board. As you can see, though, your team here at Deming is committed to making sure that you guys are a part of the whole process, even from what we just saw through policy review and regulation review. Your input is so important, not only for me as I'm working on summarizing and bringing together a lot of the trends that we're seeing and being able to share back with you all, but then also making sure that we have the full, really true scope of input across the Deming Public Schools community. And they will joke with me as well, but I gather input not only through the traditional mechanisms that we utilize, but I also believe in talking to community members at the gas station, at restaurants, at Pepper's grocery store, and going through and doing all of that. So we really can find some ways to bring in all of those aspects of input. And so anchoring ourselves in what is a strategic plan and the definition that we're working through in our processes, it can be really helpful as we're thinking about priorities and strategies. So a strategic plan is a small set of clearly defined priorities, and it's anchored in measurable student outcomes. We all know the reason we are all here is the students of Deming Public Schools, and we should be committed in holding ourselves accountable towards student outcomes for that. It is focused on improving what students experience daily, and it's designed to direct time, energy, and resources, including things just like you all were talking about with your community budget input survey. I took down lots of notes during that as well, but I'll be making some connections to that through some of our work tonight. Two, it's used to monitor progress and ensure accountability. And it's a commitment basically to the community about these are the things that we are all supporting as a board and as district leadership in service of the students in our community. I always like to say, but what is it not? Because I think sometimes when we leave that unspoken, that's where some of it can become a little muddy. And so when we look at that, really and truly thinking about that, it is not so broad that it prevents meaningful focus. A lot of times when we see plans that are very long and very broad, it doesn't allow us to prioritize what is going to move the needle for students. It's not a list of programs or specific activities. It is not a compliance document. I think of compliance documents as the laws and the policies that we must do. This is the aspirational vision of where we are pushing our students to and our commitments that we make to them every day. It's not a collection of everything that we value. That is sometimes how we end up with plans that have 100 strategies. So it is really that focused document. It's not an operational task list that's more focused on what adults will do. It's not centered on adult preferences or convenience. So when we look at this, we will always think about what is important for students, how this will impact our staff, and staff input is so critical in this whole process. But we ultimately make decisions with our students that are in mind. It's focused on priorities that cannot be monitored through clear metrics. So sometimes you'll see strategic plans that are vague and hard to monitor. And so that is not like a really focused and tight strategic plan, and it is not detached from measurable student outcomes. Before I go on, this is like Stephanie's simple language to make it as easy to understand as possible. Is there anything that what I shared that you all would like to push on or ask me any questions about? No? Good. Okay. And so where we are going is really a coherent vision in service of students. The aspiration that I have talked about with district leadership that I would like to bring to you all tonight is truly a focus on 4 goals that anchor back to student outcomes with no more than 16 strategies, 4 per goal. When I was an administrator of a school, I inherited a school that had over 40 different initiatives. And the first thing that I said was, we cannot be good at 40 things. And I said, for this year, what are the 3 things that are going to be most important for our work? And that's what I would like to be able to support this district in through our process as well, is really narrowing down what are the 4 strategies that are going to have the greatest impact towards this goal, that we're going to implement well, that we're going to prioritize resources to, et cetera. And so really just thinking about that, that's our end goal as we're going through this. So in that lens, I would like to bring you all through a process this evening where we leave with some clarity on thematic priorities to accelerate, combine, or pause. I've had the privilege of watching many of your board meetings, the recorded version, some of them live, as well. And I've taken some time to go through and elevate some themes that have come through your conversation routinely. I also elevated some themes that we're seeing from input from the community so far that we're hearing. And when I say community, I think about that as like your staff and the greater community as well as your students. And then also just some things that are also really good, that are good practice that we see kind of as trends of areas of need in education. And so I think for an example, Board Member Paez, when you had said, before when you were talking about what is discipline and behavior and focusing on that, and you said this is a trend all over the place. That is a national trend. So, you know, just things around that we see playing out. And so we're going to do this through a filter, and it's 2 layers. So when we look at some of these thematic priorities that we're going to be discussing and reviewing together this evening, it's really going to be about how much does a strategy impact student outcomes, especially layer 1 instruction. And layer 1 is that daily core instruction that every single student receives. It's that guaranteed instructional experience for all students. And then we'll also consider, do we have the capacity to implement this strategy well within the next 18 months. Strategic plans run anywhere from 3 to 5 years typically. A national trend has been a shorter strategic plan time period, just because as things have been changing and shifting so much in from the federal level, the state level, 3 years has been a little bit more of the trend that we're seeing with that. And so when we think about the capacity to implement a strategy, well within the next 12 to 18 months, 18 months would be the halfway point within an implementation of a 3-year strategic plan. And so I always say, if we're saying something is important, we should have the capacity to do it within at least the halfway point of the strategic plan, because we need time to work through as we're implementing strategies and make those adjustments as time goes on based upon the unique needs that are popping out around the student data. And to make this even simpler, I like to think about this through in like 2 words. Impact on students. So impact, and then feasibility, how likely or how feasible it is. And so thinking about that, we're actually going to do some time here together of looking at some of these thematic priorities and then considering them through the lens of impact and feasibility. When we look at impact, we're looking at it through that student outcomes focused lens. And so we would look at a strategy and say, does this strategy or priority or theme directly affect what students learn, experience, or achieve? And would this shift the quality of layer 1 or that core instruction across all classrooms? And so it's high impact if there is strong direct impact on teaching and learning, and it's lower impact if it has operational or peripheral like a connection, or it's a limited focus on instruction. Feasibility is when we start to look at that capacity to implement. And so we think about, do we have the people, time, systems, and money to do this well now? And will this stretch us beyond realistic limits? And so high feasibility is ready to implement now with solid support. And then low is needs adjustments to, low is when it needs adjustments to implement, or there's major barriers or unclear ownership. And so we're going to look at some strategies and consider that. And I always, I bring up an example from another district that I worked with when we were looking at some of their strategies and saying, really, like, let's talk about what's impactful for the everyday experience of students and how feasible it is. And so one of the strategic actions that had been listed in their plan was around a strategy that said to evaluate the number of copy machines in the district. And so we looked at that. Didn't pass judgment. We just looked at it through this lens and we said, is evaluating the number of copy machines in the district impactful for the everyday learning of students? So is that high impact or is it low impact? And you can imagine everyone said, that's low impact. There isn't really a lot of impact that we see on true learning of students with that. Feasible? Yeah, it's feasible. Someone can go and say like, hey, I've got this. So it would have been low impact, but high feasibility. And that's just the kind of thinking that we are going to engage in together tonight. Make sense so far? Okay. We can giggle. But that was a real strategy.
Were there more copy machines in classroom?
I guess there could have been. So it was just a very interesting thing. And then there was what?
Before we did that here, we had more copiers and printers than we had staff.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to start. I have two for us to walk through together, and then I have some organized at your seats for us to look through. I had prepared for 4 board members, so I'm going to distribute one stack a little bit. But these are some of the thematic priorities, and I had 2 that I wanted to go through with you all. So the first one is around high quality standards aligned core instruction. And so ensure every classroom delivers high quality standards aligned layer 1 instruction through coherent curriculum, writing integration, and strong instructional leadership. That is a very fancy, loaded word way of saying every classroom every day is going to give really high quality instruction using resources that people have agreed upon, that they are writing across content areas, and principals, assistant principals, coaches, and district leadership are providing strong leadership in support of that. Mm-hmm. So do we think about that as being high impact or low impact on student outcomes? High. And then what about the feasibility? Do we think that that is extremely feasible? Like we can start this and we now, or is it lower feasibility because there are some challenges that we foresee with that or barriers? Do we have all of the staff for making this happen? Do we have all of the resources for making this to happen? So just thinking through that lens, how would you consider feasibility for this one? And there are, oh, by the way, especially because this is in public, there are no wrong answers when we talk about impact and feasibility. There are perspectives and opinions, and we just discussed there are no wrong answers.
I think the district is better suited to answer that question than we are. And we don't know whether or not the district has barriers to implementing that now.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this, I mean, obviously, I've sat through a lot of this, I guess. I would share, well, obviously, yes, the district is best suited to do that. But based on your experience, what would you perceive?
My first perception that came to mind was the number of substitutes we have in classrooms, or long-term substitutes we have in classrooms, or teachers who are not certified to be teachers yet. How can they meet that standard?
I mean, some schools have very young principal and vice
With
principal
little
combinations,
experience, yeah.
right? And that's what I feel like medium.
Oh.
Someone tried to sneak that in on me the last time and I was like, absolutely not. And I just placed it then.
We have the goal and we have the drive.
Another thing to think about too is how challenging it is these days with parents and students and all of the poverty, fear, the housing situations, all of those things. Like you said, behaviors. There's a lot of kids that have anxiety and all of those kinds of things that, you know, although it's not as simple as just saying provide the instruction, there's also support that needs to come around for families.
So what I'm hearing based upon some of this discussion is that there are challenges and barriers that would make it very hard for us to say, like, we're going to make this happen perfectly everywhere right now, right?
Not without eliminating challenges.
Yes.
Yes.
And so when we think, and I'm gonna talk to you guys about this matrix a little bit more, but I'm just gonna place this in an area where we've identified as high impact, but low feasibility, okay? All right, and I've got one more here for you all, and let me pop that up. And this one is a guaranteed and coherent elementary experience. Ensure every elementary student receives a guaranteed academic experience with strong tier 1, layer 1, that core instruction, timely interventions, and consistent promotion standards. And so you can imagine this is something that is a little unique to Deming. It might not be it could be something that other districts also experience, but you all have an intermediate school where all of your students from elementary school come together in 6th grade. You have one middle school and you have one high school. And so you have several different elementary schools. And so this is really a thematic priority about ensuring every student, no matter what elementary school they're at, receives a guaranteed academic experience.
I would put it in the same category for the same reasons.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
In my professional opinion, that makes complete and total sense.
You're just saying that because you said there was no wrong answer.
I didn't say it was right or wrong. I just said that it makes complete and total sense.
She can see where we came.
All right, so we're gonna go through and you're going to have in front of you, you probably see them face down, a handful of cards. And then this will be, you can whichever one you would like. And then I'll break these ones up across to you guys in a moment. So you're gonna take a moment and review your cards and then determine the impact and feasibility of the strategy. And feel free, you can write on it, you can look at that and just write on it like high impact, low feasibility, high impact, high feasibility, and just write it on there. I'll go ahead and start to sort. I don't want you all to be worried that your opinion of this is the only one that's going here. We're going to come together. You guys are all going to have a chance to kind of review some things, make some shifts and adjustments, and have some dialogue together as well. But we start individually at first.
So you're saying high and low, but there's a medium?
There is no medium.
There's a blue line for medium.
So I'm asking you to take a stand. In the real world, is there typically some moderate or something like that? Yes. But if for the sake of this activity, I'm asking you to take a stand and choose one or the other.
She's used to reading these powerfully worded.
I am also available to translate.
No, I'm not judging. I have to be like, okay, hold on.
No, and that's where like I said it and I was like, here's the simple Stephanie explanation. My background as a teacher was special education. So I found myself, you would take big concepts, break them down smaller. So
That's why to me on that other one, even the word guaranteed, I was like, oh, that's you into a corner. It's really hard. Yes, that's right. You're just trying right after.
I'm sorry.
I just did HH or HL.
I'm assuming that impact was the first one and
Yeah.
feasibility. I was right there.
Sure. They're hanging it up. All of them seem like they would be high impact. I didn't know anything about thought machine. Right. Seriously. I didn't know there was two more.
I'm sorry. It's because I added to your pile.
Oh.
I was prepared for 4 board members.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all are gonna just have to give me one moment. I prepped all my tape. Just takes me a minute to get.
Now, are these suggestions that you've gotten from feedback from everybody in the district, or are they?
Some of this is based on like some like thematic themes that are elevating across the different input groups. We are still to have more input to come through a few other mechanisms, specifically around some surveying, and I have some ideas based upon some things that we also discussed tonight about that. And then, but these are some themes. Some of them are also themes that were elevated across your board conversations, across board meetings. And then some of them are best practices, kind of like a national or a state trend. Yeah. All right. So I am placing these up here and I'm going to take a moment and explain a little bit about our matrix with you all. So we've made this matrix over on the side here. It's very fancy blue painter's tape, only the best. But what we have here is your vertical axis, or that vertical line is impact. So anything that is on the upper part is high impact and anything on the bottom part is low impact. And then your horizontal line is feasibility. So anything on the right is high feasibility and anything on the left is low feasibility. And so what that looks like when we sort these is like this, where we have those quadrants that we placed the strategies into based upon the suggested placements that you all shared there for high feasibility, high impact. And then what that kind of translates into is really then thinking as an organization, the things that we placed into that upper right quadrant that was high impact, high feasibility, those are the things that we are saying we should accelerate right now. We've got the resources available and we know it's going to make a difference for students. These are the things that we should be accelerating. Then when we look at the upper left quadrant, that's where we invest and build capacity. So sometimes we have to think about reallocation of resources. We have to think about different ways to allocate staff. I always think about resources as something that is very broad, and a lot of people just say, give more resources to this. But I think about resources are personnel, financial, it could be technology resources, could be physical resources. Sometimes they were even talking about buildings when we're looking at these things. In the bottom right quadrant, that's where we look at these ones and we say, these things are very easy to happen. They're highly feasible, but they're going to have a lower impact on the day-to-day experience for students, or that high impact on their student outcomes. Those are things that we think about is, should we combine them with something else? Do they need to be revised in some way that they are more impactful? And then the final bottom left quadrant is the things that we say we need to pause or defer this. Like, this is something that isn't at this moment in time as critical as some of these other areas. And I always say, doesn't mean that it's not important. It could be important, but it might not be feasible in the time frame that we're looking at. It might be something that's going to be more feasible in 7 years. Might be something that's more feasible in 10 years. It might be more feasible when a magical grant comes with millions and millions of dollars, right? Like, those are the types of things that we think about there. So I am going to ask you all to take a moment and look at your matrix and kind of see what you all have standing out here. Go ahead, walk up, and I'm going to give you permission to do something. You can move it if you don't agree with it. I know, you can move someone's cheese. That's what that always makes me think about.
Like without their permission?
Yes. But no consent without their permission, yes. However, you could have a conversation with your colleagues at this time.
But these are the things you said we would only want 16 of total?
No.
These are thematic priorities. They could lend themselves to either goals or more of a strategy. Some of them are more like goal in nature. Some of them are a little bit more strategy in nature. So if you wanted to roughly give you guys, if you wanted to say like, hey, we really should, above this line of impact of what we are saying, do we have more than 16? Are we exceeding 16 here? Yes.
All right.
And if you are, what do you think maybe you should do? And there isn't a right or a wrong answer.
This one says, low feasibility when it comes to communication and
It's
transparency.
low impact, high feasibility.
So you feel like it has a low impact?
On the day-to-day for kids, yeah.
Oh, okay, yes, maybe that's what I was in.
That really like the day-to-day experience of students, their daily classroom instruction.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
The other thing that I like to think about with this, so like, this is a great example to say here. So we know this is important.
Yeah, there's an
It is
indirect.
so like, it is so important. And what might happen is a department or division in the district may take this on as their work to make the overall strategic plan happen. But it's not necessarily of what we're saying is like every student, every day, in every classroom, like this is the thing that moves the needle. Are there some other things up here that are more likely to move the needle for students? So that's what I think about a lot of times with some of these things, that there are things up here that maybe it's not a strategic plan strategy. It's important, but it's work of a different department or division. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. I think, keeping in mind the daily,
Day to day.
day-to-day, yeah.
And I can pop those questions back up for you all as well.
Well, I think I don't know why, I don't know why.
I feel like this one with it being facilities would be more of a, we couldn't do it next month, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's still high
Yeah.
impact, however.
yeah, I do agree.
Another thing for you all to think about when you're looking at this is, could I tie a student outcome directly to this? Could I tie an academic outcome? Could I tie an attendance outcome? Could I tie a behavior or discipline outcome?
Do you think we do? Yeah.
It helps.
I think that's just one of the elementaries that came was talking about how each grade level had their own little bucks.
I think it's
Where they awarded kids as they made good decisions.
it's a matter of staff making that a priority.
I think I just wondered, like, do they have the ability to do that right now?
I think with
I think-
like
I think
simple,
staff
something
does.
simple like that play money where they literally earn something that they then get to go spend it. I don't remember which school did that, but it's
But
been in the.
the chaperones school also decided that that was gonna be one of their priorities, is to make sure the kids developed responsible decision making to kind of control their own behaviors. And then I was looking. The chronic absence, that's a hard one to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's high impact for sure, but to change that is very difficult. And this one was. Those are the ones we did.
No, I'll say that, but,
Oh, that's not the one. Okay.
Again,
no.
comfortably.
That's okay. That's okay. I just want to give you guys the space because you didn't get to see them. Like, it's just like, it's important to do that. And to think about. The other question before you guys go and sit down and we do kind of a last kind of part with some of this, and then we'll have some discussion as a group as we're moving forward. A question that I would ask you all is, as you're looking at these things that you said, like, these are above the impact line. These are high impact, these things that are on the upper half of our matrix. Do any of them relate to each other? Could you cluster some of them together?
Yeah.
And so if you guys feel like that, I would encourage you to just take a moment and do that now.
I feel like those. And then data. That and then the map.
There was another one.
Maybe this was with the social emotional.
Thank you.
That's stuff. Maybe school. There you go, yeah. Look at those. It's okay. It was missing on. Never.
That, and when you clustered, you have like 9 either singles or groups now. Sometimes it makes you feel a little better too, when you look at that. Right? Oh, that's the one that I was like, I don't think for it. Look, it's my baby, like little, we're gonna.
I'll get a piece then.
What?
I'll get one piece of tape. stick
You'll
it.
get me one more?
Yeah.
Was it, it was here with those 3, okay. How do you feel about this now? Better? Okay, we're actually gonna even do just one more little layer with it, okay? So you guys go ahead and sit down. I'm gonna explain our next piece to you all. So now you have here the things that you really want to invest in, build capacity, and accelerate. And you've grouped them, you've got them there. And you've said these are things that are going to move the needle for the students in Deming Public Schools. So in front of you all, there are blue sticky dots. You have 5 blue sticky dots. I'm stealing the extra one to make sure no one is tempted. And so using your stickers, you are going to have 5 stickers to now and say, of these things that are up there, these are the 5 that are the most important to me up there that I really think could make the biggest impact for our students here in Deming Public Schools. How you use your 5 is up to you. You can put 1 dot on 5 separate strategies. If there's one thing up there that you are like, I bet my bottom dollar on this, and you want to put all 5 on there, you can. If you want to put 2 on 1, 3 on 3 separate, your choice. It's flexible with what you do with the 5 dots, but you just only have 5 dots. Thank you, sir. Saving the day.
Talking about that.
Yes,
All right.
every day, we have evaluations.
That's what you're on.
Sharon let me sit on mine. I was like, I'm not gonna put it here. She said, put it up there somewhere.
I did tell you to do that.
I doubled up, I think.
Just believe if your input is here, you're a valued member of it, it should be there and it should matter. All right,
It's difficult.
so now we're just gonna look at this and we're gonna say which priorities clearly rose to the top. So I'm gonna just say that when we're looking at like, some of them are on individual strategies, but when we look at it kind of even grouped together, this concept of really focusing in on the academic experience that students are having is truly important for you all. We really see that happening there based upon our dots around a standards aligned core instruction, secondary academic coherence, that guaranteed elementary experience, but also that focus on multilingual excellence that we see. And we also then would say, right, coming behind that is around some of those tasks for student centered operational systems, transportation, nutrition, all of those things, along with how are we allocating our resources and the instructional leadership and teacher talent development that is happening. That's another one. Tied right there with it is student well-being and belonging would be kind of how I group that together. And then so those were your big ones that you had as like, boom, those were rising to the top around that. You all have some other priorities here around student attendance, around data, and like data informing different processes, whether it might be around enrollment stability or it's data around instruction, whatever that might be, but like data systems really there. And then also on college and career readiness as well. We did already engage in some merging to reduce some of the complexity there, but I do want to ask you all, was there anything that wasn't elevated in that, like for you as a board member, as a community member, potentially as a parent, whatever your role is outside of even just being a board member, what is missing?
I would say something more to address the behavioral issues that are happening in schools. Because that does have a direct effect on the students' day-to-day academics too.
That was kind of in that emotional. social
Yeah,
I
but I felt like
think
it
that
wasn't
one-
elevated enough to
Right.
say, because it directs safety too.
Right.
It's affecting the safety of students and staff day to day. Which I imagine
And
it has an
teacher-
impact on teaching.
And teachers too, teacher safety and teacher.
Absolutely.
Right, because one of them mentions kind of the way I read into it is to have like a across the board, like all of the elementaries have the same matrix for behaviors and things like that. That's what I would like to see. Is every school have the same, yes, and could follow through with it.
Consistency. Of
Yeah.
Across the district.
Anything else stand out to you guys are missing? That was the only one that came to mind for me.
Yeah.
Are there any other reflections or wonderings that you all have left after you've experienced this?
I think I don't feel qualified to determine the feasibility of some of these things. I feel like I don't know enough to know how feasible or not feasible some of these things are.
Because actually feasibility takes a lot of factors into it, like
That
it's
we
not,
don't know.
it's like family factors and financial factors and.
For the district's
District's
ability.
ability to even.
Or you don't
staff
staff
to do it.
within the
I
district.
would
You know,
agree
if
with
you
that.
have already have the people,
All fair,
or if you
all
need
fair.
that, yeah.
Very fair.
I think that, yeah, that's a super fair reflection because really a lot of times when we think about feasibility, and I'm going back to that kind of like above the line work and below the line work, feasibility often falls in that below the line work. So I'm really, I think that you guys elevating that is spot on based upon how governance structures work.
Well, we also don't want to set a goal above the line that there's no realistic way that they're
Mhm.
using to meet that, because that's just,
Yep.
setting people up for failure. We don't want that.
So I'm kind of just writing that down right now. Setting goals requires the board and staff.
And then I think the only other reflection I'd have is, I mean, even grouping things together, it still feels like it's a lot to accomplish, you know,
within
within a 3-year timeframe.
Yes.
I do feel like some of them have a little bit of the same verbiage in them.
Yeah.
But you might be able to combine some where it doesn't look like so many, but yeah.
Still is a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like when we look at that and we say that. And so that's why this process and doing this across so many groups is important, because we'll start to see the patterns emerge. What are the things that are really rising to the top consistently? Did something rise to the top with one group? So then we start to flag that and think about that for more of like a professional development or something like that. So thinking about that through all of these lenses starts to inform not only the plan, but then also the work around the plan as well. All right. That's it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so that is my contact information. If you all would have any other additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. What it will be happening after this, other than some of our staff, our community and student surveys that are happening, our input sessions here. This was our final input session. And so based upon our input sessions, I'm going to be putting together kind of like an executive summary so you all can start to see some of the things that have really elevated to the top with that. And so we'll be sharing that with you all, but then also some of the stakeholder groups that we met with too, to kind of, and I always talk about that as like a gut check. So this is what the patterns and trends are saying. How does that sit? Like, is it going to make you stay up at night? What are we seeing here? Is there some other things that we want to make sure that we are thinking about? And then I believe you said after spring break would be the surveys.
Yeah, I got those. You asked me for a final review. I'll get those to you and we'll get those out.
Mhm.
I just got to talk with Andrew because we're just getting about ready to send out our panorama parent surveys.
And we don't want to
So I'm
over
kind of
survey.
thinking, the best direction in which to
Yep.
go.
So they don't think they've done it.
They've done it. So I have to make a note to talk with them about that.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow.
And I would 100% prioritize Panorama because the national norm reference and all of that around that process is very, very critical for that. And so our goal is really the end of this school year to kind of have our goals finalized and then engage in the additional work for the strategies, share the full blown plan back with you all for input kind of a couple times possibly through those stages to make sure that in your opinion, we're not going completely out of whack, and then ultimately a final board approval because Wildcat Welcome
It's coming.
is coming, and that would be
July.
like where we would like to launch the plan fully.
Okay, so having this done in place by July. Okay, that was my concern in the back of my mind, was like, we've spent so much time on a strategic plan that I would really like to
It's gotta
finish
be,
one.
it has to be, Ms. Crumley, it has to be the document that sets the tone and the direction for all of us at Wildcat Welcome starting next year, right? And so that's gonna happen.
Okay.
As I support districts across the country, I always say the most impactful work comes from a high quality strategic plan that everyone's committed to and understands. And that helps anchor everything that we do around implementation and impact monitoring to say, is it being implemented well and is it impacting our students every day? So thank you guys so much for your transparency and vulnerability and kind of working through this process. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to continue to partner with you all through this work.
And Madam President, before we have a motion to adjourn, I just want to let you know the policies that weren't as urgent that we didn't get to address this evening on our agenda. We will I'll work with Mr. Turner. We'll figure out when the appropriate time to bring them for a first read is, and we'll handle them through our regular working. So take a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that,
Yes, ma'am.
the
Sorry.
next regular meeting will be held March 26, 2026 at 5:30 PM. The meeting will be held at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building here on 400 Cody Road in Deming. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
And I second,
Mrs. Johnson,
yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley, yes.